Okay. Right. Let me just write the number down. 2 minutes.
All right. So when are we going to start recording? In a moment.
We're gonna. Well, no, we're recording now.
Yeah, but when we're going to start the thing.
Well, we'll start right now. So
All
let's just cue the ridiculously expensive, non-Marvel ripped-off intro. Haven't done this in a long time. Hello everybody and welcome to another E5 podcast. I never thought I'd be saying that again, but we're back. We're doing some more. How many? Only John and Dave know. I have no idea. And Mr. Skirm. I'm Paul Meenan and I am joined as ever by my beautiful and incredibly competent tag team partners. Introduce yourself, chaps.
Hello, I'm JW.
And hey, Dave Watts, Sparky Ninja.
There we go, guys. We're back. I don't know if we can call this another series, a special, whatever.
It's let's just say what it is. We're always going to come back, but now we've bothered to try to make us come back because we've got we've not stopped talking.
No, God no.
We've it's not as if we've just got back together.
We just stopped recording all of our conversation.
We just cut everyone else off.
No, it's been ages since we recorded one of these. When was the actual last one? Because there's been so much since. I mean, we haven't released anything this year at all, other than I think it was when Amendment 2 was that this year. I'm totally lost track actually. When was the last time we actually did a podcast? Because we did the webinars last year.
Well, wasn't webinars one of the last things that we did?
Yes, it was. Yes, and then I released a video at Christmas explaining what
you did your talk.
Was.
You did your talk last video. I think was your talk at the conference. You uploaded that.
Was so. One of my voluntary roles is I'm chair of the Electrical Safety Roundtable. So I was asked to speak at this electrical safety conference with Clive Betts MP. Didn't think they'd actually let me, so I just thought go for it. And that video is on our YouTube channel, and it's me telling an inconvenient truth to the industry. But yeah, so apologies, there's not much been on this channel or Dave's channel or whatever channel this appears on. But yeah, we've kind of been really busy. I mean,
if anyone wants regular content, they know. If anyone wants regular stuff, just subscribe to John. Not nowhere else. Just go to John. Yeah, that's where the regular stuff comes from.
John has all the subscribers anyway. We have apparently, I checked this morning, 4,000 subscribers. So it's gone up by 1,000 without putting a video up. How that works, I have no idea, but there you go. So only 4,000 lunatics are actually probably going to watch this. I'll be honest with you guys, I personally said I wasn't doing any more. And the only reason that I'm doing this is because our good friend Mr. Skirm has stage 4. It's prostate, isn't it? It's prostate cancer. Prostate cancer. Yeah, prostate cancer. So we have spent, I would think it's fair to say, many evenings and hours on private online chats with him while he's been sat in hospitals. The man is a machine. I've never seen anybody like that in my life. He's had COVID, and we have tried our best to virtually be there for him as a crutch and a sounding board and all that good stuff.
But strangely enough, if anything, he's actually just, as much as we've been there when he's needed us to kind of like talk on that, he's been there for a lot of people on the Discord and stuff. He's and my Facebook community. He's always in there helping and stuff. He is quite unbelievable, to be honest. Although he's just got and he's just got his fellowship now. It's like for himself during all of this, which is inevitable.
It was inevitable, to be honest with you. Paul, so Paul is battling stage 4 cancer. There is an article on LinkedIn and there's an article in the IET around Foothold. I'll put the links in the description. And there's also an article in this month's Pro Electrician magazine. But it's been, I think the last time we recorded a podcast was actually around September last year. So effectively, it's been nearly a year since we actually recorded a podcast.
Time has flown by, actually.
It's been well, we did quite a lot of podcasting during the outbreaks of COVID, but I mean, if I was to give a summary update of what's happened during COVID, I've lost 4 friends. I know not quite a few people have had it. A very close friend of mine died of a heart attack. Another one died of COVID. I have recently just recovered from COVID, as you guys know. I went to Ireland. I was double jabbed and ended up getting it on the boat on the way over. I ended up in a hospital on a ventilator, and that was just horrid in every way it can be. And eventually got discharged from hospital in Ireland, came home, got readmitted to hospital in Southend, stayed there for a stint, and yeah, I've only been back at work a few weeks. And the reason, from my perspective, that I'm doing these again was mainly from all the conversations with Mr. Skirm. So blame Mr. Skirm for these podcasts coming back, because he was quite insistent that we had to do them, and he will be in future episodes. And
yeah, and the reason we keep mentioning Paul there is because there's so much that we haven't reached on the previous, because technically we're technically able, and we'd always need Paul Skirm to come on. So he is going to come on, so when we schedule them at a time that's best for him. But there's lots to talk about, that conversations he's going to have to carry. But yeah, it is one of the reasons that we're coming back with these strong.
Yeah, and he's been really busy while being off, because he's been writing technical papers and articles, and he's been doing stuff and still helping people even when he's ill. And also, I think one of the reasons why we're doing this as well is we've got to get back into the swing of doing stuff, because last year we promised to do some webinars, and we've got to get them done. We've got a list of quite a few webinars that we've started writing, and we're plowing through them. And the good thing is unlike the last ones, which we wrote lastminute.com, we'll have these finished in advance. So hopefully winter time this year we'll be entertaining you with the live webinars on Dave's Sparky Ninja, which will be good.
Webinars, yeah, we'll get them going.
So yeah, forgive the rust, because we are rusty, and it's weird because everybody's listening to us talking as we would normally do. But what we're going to do today, we're going to start off with something nice and easy, because I don't do social media. Let's be perfectly frank. And I do, since our last adventures together, I've removed Twitter because it's just a toxic wasteland and takes up too much time. I'm not on Facebook. I haven't been on LinkedIn in over a year, thank God, because that seems to be just like Facebook. And also Instagram. I enjoy as a platform because it's visual and audible learning. And if anybody does check out the E5 Instagram, there's lots of videos and silly memes. When I'm bored, I'll do something stupid and show my humor and try and put loads of educational stuff and coding practice on. And yeah, so basically that's all I do anyway. I don't know about you lads. Are you still all tweetering and all that malarkey? Are you still? Because I don't know. I don't bother looking at anything.
As much as I used to, I backed off of Twitter because I can't really have the right conversations in the character limit. I'll reply to people if they tag me, but I'll not try to start conversations going on there.
Well, I still use Twitter some of the time, but I've never actually got into this sort of great lengthy conversation and argument situation. You just normally get, here's the thing, or here's a reply. If you don't like it, well, too bad. That's it, and then they'll go back to it.
What I want to know, John, is when are you going to start TikTok?
That is never. Is the answer to that.
Talking and ticking.
Well, yeah, I can tell you now. While I have checked out TikTok, and Mother of God, it is the strangest thing ever. I don't get it. I even looked at Twitch the other day. Just don't get it. I'm sorry, I don't get it. Evidently showing my age, but yeah, I don't really get it. But the one thing I do like about Instagram is I'm not a massive tool man. I'm not a massive giveaway man or anything like that. But I am loving some of the good practice stuff that we see. And I'm also seeing, while I'm really enjoying the good practice stuff, because it's great that people are showing it, and I've put some of my stuff on there as well for criticism. But I also see a lot of really bad stuff on social media. And the worst thing is, some of the people that share their stuff on Instagram, they share it as, oh my God, look how wonderful this is. But when you look at it, you just go, that's completely non-compliant, or that's really dangerous, but they don't know. And it's then, how do you approach them? So I obviously will never ever comment and go, that's terrible. That's because
that is what you do. The only thing you can do is not comment, because if you say anything negative, you're
a troll, you're toxic, you're a horrible person.
You get the anti. You can try to even offer a compliment or support that will give them a benefit to use next time, which is a way of saying you could have done better.
Yeah,
that'll be you get attacked for that. So yeah, I mean, often the best way to do it is just not engage, which doesn't really help them. But that's not the big problem here with all this. Is these platforms aren't really used for education by the majority of the users. It's all entertainment. Look at the way YouTube has gone. It's all entertainment, really.
Yeah, I should probably have said that. So I've unsubscribed from all YouTubers. So apologies, all YouTubers. I just don't. I made a conscious decision when I came off Twitter to not watch any YouTubers, with the exception of these two ragamuffins who are sat next to me virtually.
There are a number of electricians I'll see mentioned on Twitter that they don't watch this, they don't watch this, they don't watch this. Then I'll name a few that they do watch. There are some that know how to use things like YouTube for educational resources, but people who land on there straight away, it's more of an entertainment thing. It's more of a popularity thing. Hopefully that kind of, after a while, fades off, and they then start to rewatch the stuff that was educational. If I watch a video that's entertainment, I'll watch it once and whatever. But if I find something that's educational, I'll probably like it, and I'll probably go back, or I'll even
save it. Yeah. I mean, I get recommendations all the time from YouTube on electrical stuff, and I'll be honest with you, I've lost count of the amount of electrical YouTubers. But you're right, I try and stick with just the educational content. That balanced with my favourite thing, wrestling or Star Trek, and also while I was in COVID, I discovered the Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes movies, which are all available on YouTube, 14 of them, and they are absolutely fantastically brilliant in every way, shape, or form. He is now my favourite Sherlock Holmes, just because I had so little to do in hospital. I just was so excited to watch one. I made sure I watched one every day. As mad as that sounds.
But now when you watch one, will you not just feel like you're in hospital?
When I watched one, I made sure, this is really weird, because I had so little to do. When I watched the first one, I was enthralled by it. So the next day I had my dinner at 6 o'clock, and what I did is I made sure that the trolley which it sits on, I basically put my camera, my phone up against the soup, and I just pressed play, and I ate my dinner and watched it. And for that 1 hour, 10 minutes, I wasn't in hospital. I was normal. I didn't have a cannula in me. I didn't have a oxygen thing in my nose. I was just normal. I know it sounds mad, but yeah, absolutely fell in love with those movies while I was in hospital. So, but anyway, back to Instagram. There's a term I keep seeing a lot of in work and in Instagram, and it's best practice, good practice, and it's kind of doing my head in.
That just gets thrown in like sales spiel these days.
It's like a light fluffy cloud sentence, and so I thought I'd talk about it. I'd air my views, and then you guys can just say, shut up, Paul, you're talking rubbish, or I agree with you. So can
I just butt in and say, I mean, you do take extra efforts to often show what you consider to be better practice, sometimes knowing that the majority of people will go, if you don't really do that. On the E5 Instagram, you've often, like, you did that with the you did that thing with the meter tails where you put the little caps on that stops people.
The
bush. You're probably going to bring this up as we talk through.
Oh yeah, the female bush.
Female bushes. You have a habit of going, hey, what do you think about this? And a lot of times it's the first time people have seen it.
Yeah, and it's weird because it's kind of stuff I was taught when I was an apprentice, so it's normalised for me. So we have spoken in previous podcasts about the state of the education industry, which then immediately traumatises Dave. But it's in a poor state, and the need for more education for that generation that are now intensely working, having done short courses, is more evident in the last year than ever. There is an inherent thirst for knowledge, and I thought it'd be really good if we just defined what good practice is and what best practice is, because loads of people say, I promote best practices, I promote good practices, and so I did a bit of research on this. So for those who are researching, there's 1,266 pages. That's 1,266 pages across the entire suite of building regulations, which is a secretary piece of law. And at the very start of them is Building Regulation 7, which is workmanship. And I just want to explain a few bits that shows why this is such an interesting debate, because Section 2 of Building Regulations 7 says there are ways of establishing the adequacy of workmanship. Okay, that's interesting. So it then goes on about CE marking, but we all know Mr. Skirman ahead going, no. There's lots and lots of fake stuff, and I've seen stuff CE marked that doesn't meet European technical assessment or harmonised product standards.
Can I just butt in?
Yeah, go mate, go.
For anyone listening, they can pause or whatever now. You're reading from a free to obtain document?
I am. You can see how rusty we are. Yes.
Yeah. So anyone who's listening, if they want to follow this,
or watching,
yeah, you could just is it approved documents or is it on the publishing portal now?
Yeah,
I'm on it. It's
just Google merged approved documents and you'll get all of them.
So you're looking at approved documents, or you can download them as an individual bit, and you're reading now from approved document regulation 7.
Yes, workmanship.
Yeah.
Okay. Interestingly enough, it references methods of carrying out different types of work are given in other British standards, which normally would always say just good workmanship materials, and materials must comply, the great circle of life. But then workmanship immediately introduces independent certification schemes. So some independent certification schemes specify how workmanship will deliver a declared level of performance. The person carrying out the work should show the workmanship will provide the appropriate level of protection and performance. Protection for what? Is that good selection direction or protection of the independent certification scheme? It's a bit
question.
Doesn't really give us much. But then it then goes on to say schemes, which I hate because it's divisive in nature, includes competent person self-certification schemes that register installers of materials, can provide a means of ensuring that work is being carried out by knowledgeable contractors. They are, John. You're a knowledgeable chap.
Yeah.
You want to join a scheme and self-certify that you do great workmanship? Please note that skilled, instructed, and competent are not mentioned in this whatsoever. But John's a knowledgeable contractor, and you will comply with the appropriate standards if you, one, know they exist, and two, can afford a second mortgage to buy them all.
Yeah, and that's a major problem with standards in that they're so horrendously expensive. And if anyone hasn't gone and looked, just go and look on the BSI website and look at some of the prices, and there you go. You'll suddenly find that they can't be afforded. So
I must jump to the defence of the British Standards Institute. They will argue, not that I've got a prepared statement, which I don't, but they will argue that inherent great value from the cost of these standards, as some standards are far more expensive and they deliver value in everything they do in a socially and responsible way. There we go. Hey, but it goes on. More waffle in the building regs. Management systems. So I still haven't got a competent person. I've just got a honourable chap so far. The quality of workmanship is covered by a quality management scheme, such as one that complies with BSEN ISO 9000. So basically, workmanship is about quality improvement and the Denning Plan Do Check Acts. It's basically saying workmanship is down to the person doing it to snag their own work and improve continuously. This is absolute rubbish. Years ago, there was a document, and I've been trying to find it all day, to be honest with you. And one of the things it did do was it defined, I think it was some checklist for a local authority, and it used to define workmanship as, let me see if I can remember this now, straight, square, flush, plumb, level, compliant materials, skilled and knowledgeable persons, correct tools, correct knowledge and application of construction techniques, methodologies, and all that malarkey. This is now basically saying, be ISO 9001 registered scheme, be in a competent person's scheme, you'll be a knowledgeable chap, so that's okay, John. Although you're not in a scheme, but you're still a knowledgeable chap. And just follow the waffle in the standards.
This just excuses every single point of view, though, because, you could do the minimum to get one of those. We can do the minimum to get all of those. And having those doesn't in any way get you good workmanship.
ISO 9001 is about having six procedures, keeping records. It's an
administrative behaviour. It's a habit like that. It's nothing to do with your skills at the workplace from the perspective of the craft.
But don't worry, guys, because the document continues.
Okay.
Past experience. I'd like to see this in the regs. Past experience, such as use in existing building, may show that workmanship is appropriate for the function. Now, could I then say I've always used foam filler, so I'll continue to use it?
Mm.
And then there's a section on tests, but it says tests can be used to show workmanship is appropriate. And it only gives 3 instances, and that's sound insulation, airflow, ventilation, and pressure testing. Nothing about electrical whatsoever. So building regulation 7, this was amended, by the way, in July, is pants.
Yeah, this is all thinking about the building itself, obviously. So you're thinking about seals, doors, windows, pressure testing and things like that. Doesn't really help with craftsmanship or workmanship of electrical installations.
Well, I'll give you a couple of different definitions of good practice that I found today. So the first one, good practice, which is your baseline level. So if you do something, if you're a contractor and you're working to the regs and you're certified at 7671, you are good practice. Good practice can be defined as something that worked well and produced good results, that met the standard, that served its desired purpose and is better than average. So they're 4 different definitions of good practice. So that's
all right, let's say that I have just come out of a college, one of these rapid methods. I've done my 6-week 2365. I now have some acknowledgement of experience that I've worked with some people, and I've got a membership, and I've bought loads of books. I've joined the fan club. I've bought the books. I've got the books. I've got the tools. How can I still be confident that I'm going to do the right work and do the best practice and that my workmanship is good? I no longer have that kind of guide, that kind of like you would with an apprenticeship where you'd have a mentor. Now I haven't got that. How can I get that? Or how can I feel confident in my workflow? This
is where there is one positive about quality management systems. And I don't mean process. I mean that continuous circle of improvement, plan, do, check, act. Somebody who comes out of college is going to fail, but they will also know when they've done something well. They'll have their favourites. Yeah. For me, the advice I've always said to apprentices is go and do what you're scared of. I did. I was scared of central heating more, and I went and did it. I like the first definition, something that worked well and produced good results. Most electricians have that conversation in the van. When they finished a rewire, what worked well, what gave them the good results, what didn't.
But for some electricians, good results is when it works. Doesn't actually mean it's not going to catch fire. In 6 months.
If there are any electricians like that are watching, please switch off. Just kind of point.
But really. I mean, there are many that'll just go right. Turn it on. Is it working? Huzzah! Good workmanship.
Yeah, if it's on, that's not the sort of caliber really that we're kind of aiming these technical symposiums at. But so yeah, they're the kind of 4 things for good practice. So something that worked well, produced good results. Something that met the standard. Something that achieved the desired purpose, and something that was better than average. Now, best practice. So I think I've done best practice on my consumer unit downstairs. I've put a lot of love and TLC into that dump, and now I've got a beautiful 21-way board with surge protection, all the rest of it, which you can see the photos on our Instagram account. I spent a lot of time, by the way, if I was a normal contractor, there's no way I'd be able to do that level of quality. The only reason I did it like that was because I wanted to have it as a kind of a showpiece, saying, look what you can do if you're a lot quicker than this arthritic, cuddly person.
Right. But to be fair, if I as a contractor liked the look of that, I could plan ahead and engineer that method of that approach to the work.
Yes.
Probably a sacrifice of an extra half an hour to 45 minutes per board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's it's definitely a couple of hours more work. But in all fairness, the reason it's taken me so long is just purely because joint pain and arthritis and stuff. But I consider it best practice. Now, this is what I've researched from a definition of best practice. Best practice is something that produces superior results, i.e. to comply with all the legal, regulatory and ethical requirements. There's also another definition, and that best practice is surpassing all others. Yes, my fuse board is best practice. Prove me wrong. John, what do you think? Well, because John did a video on my board. Rate my board, John.
Yeah, the original one, which you didn't do, was a bit rubbish, wasn't it? So,
it was.
Yeah, I mean, you can obviously, there is always a balance to be had between doing the absolute best and then obviously the cost of it and who wants to be taking that long and the price of it. But there is obviously a balance in there. So you're not just doing the bare minimum is not really good enough. But obviously, as I said there, if you could spend an extra 6 hours making it all nice and tidy and putting all the bits on, well, on the other hand, it's going to be probably a bit far the other way. So there's definitely some sort of mid-balance point there where you can definitely do better than the absolute minimum.
I guess for me, the answer for me would be right. Best practice for me is where I'd say, right, if I spend more time on this now, is the only outcome going to be that it's going to look a bit neater or a little bit more polished or a little bit cleaner, then that might not be necessary. But if it's going to be a bit safer, a bit less of a risk, then I've not reached best practice yet, because I can put better in for obviously the fundamental principles and all that stuff that I need to do. If the extra time and effort in is just for the aesthetics, and it doesn't inherently make it any better in the way of energy performance, heat losses, or anything like that, doesn't do anything to improve that, then I've reached that point where I would say, right, now that's it. Because you can always do more. It's like art, you can always carry on and do more and do more and do more to the point where you've just gone completely batshit crazy with it.
I think there is, the one thing I like about Instagram is there is a lot of more good practice on Instagram than I ever thought there was in the industry, and it's great to see, because the ones that do the good practice, if I pick some residual current, Mike, he does good to best practice consistently. EGW, definitely best practice without a doubt. Benchmark best practice. Bristol Sparky.
The thing with someone like EGW is he's showing you all the little micro parts, not the overall job. It's look at that bend, look at that set, and so there's been a lot of background of experience and time and effort to create that, and so it's a craftsman taking a picture of craftsmanship.
Yes, and EGW is
significant
unique
difference buying a pre-made set and just throwing it on the wall.
Yeah, he's definitely a unique Instagram account. I don't understand some of the drum and bassy stuff and images he does, but he is definitely a best practice electrical installer, and he's sharing knowledge freely, which is good. Residual current's great. Bristol Sparky, for a farmer, fantastic spark. No, I shouldn't really call him a farmer, but he's been ribbing me today, so I'm going to rib him back.
I saw the stories.
Yeah, he's a good lad. He's an absolutely sound chap. But yeah, so good practice, best practice. So as an electrician, are we aspiring to good practice or best practice? And I genuinely personally believe I've always tried best to do good practice, but downstairs I've done best. However, if I was doing it again somewhere else, I wouldn't critchley each core. I'd just get a dyno tape and tape it around each conductor, a little bit lashier, but I would still use the hot connect indicators because they're pennies and they're just really good assurance. And I do like the you can get now the little tubes, the exploding tubes in the fuse boards.
I've seen a few people doing this now. Yeah.
Envirograph, they don't sponsor us, I paid for it. A really good simple idea. If it gets too hot in there, it just explodes if there's a fire. Fantastic. They're the sorts of devices that work from the original intent, so they serve a desired purpose and they're better than average.
Yeah, so and they don't break the bank either.
No, they don't. I think it was 15 quid for my one. And whilst lots of people have got confused over the whole metal enclosures and what it's supposed to do, and because everyone thinks they must be 100% fire sealed, that's not really what they were supposed to be. And we'll talk about that another day with Paul. Having something like that, there's nothing wrong with it. And I genuinely do think for 15 quid, you're absolutely laughing. Yeah, you're laughing. Do you want to sugar?
Yeah, I mean, things like that. Obviously, there's an extra cost, but there's also a big benefit as well in that your house doesn't burn down if there's something goes wrong with it. So that kind of thing, definitely. So it's about whether it's worthwhile and think, well, is this going to make a better result? And yes, it is.
Yes, and again, it's that. Well, I'm going to go back to fundamental principles. Not that I haven't been reading it all bloody day, but it's that prevention of harmful effects of your installation. If you've got a thatched cottage house, which we'll cover on another podcast, these are the sorts of things that can prevent mass damage. When there's a fire, it can do massive damage. And trust me, I know fucking enough about electrical fires over the last few years, but it can do damage. And if you can have something that can stop it, then that's great. I consider that as best practice because stopping a fire would produce superior results.
Well, it's too early for us to start talking about Amendment 2. But we know that there is some effort to reapproach and rewrite some regulations in Chapter 42 from that approach. The was it the BD2, BD3? These things there's been some rewrite for the approach to thermal effects,
basically.
And we are going to reapproach that, and we'll probably hold off some of the talk of that. We'll do one on factures though, because we've got some good information on that.
So we will. That's a good point, actually. We will do another update podcast when Amendment 2 comes out, which is March next year.
March, April time. Last I heard, I spoke with a couple of people last week, is they're pretty much at the point where it's got to be done. It's got to go through for proofing and printing at some point.
Okay. So what we'll just have to do that as a special then next year, because I don't intend to be recording dozens and dozens and dozens of these as a weekly regulars. It'll just be cover the subject matter. I think we did say when we finished these last time that if we've got something to talk about, we'll do it. If we don't,
I think the better thing for us to do on the E5 channel, mate, is to give everyone else a chance. We've got this period, we've had 2 or 3 years where everyone else is now doing this. Podcasts, YouTube, and all this stuff. We'll let them all have their version and their interpretation. The manufacturers and everybody else.
I don't really watch the other podcasts.
No, manufacturers I'm talking about.
Oh, right, gotcha, sorry.
CPS, manufacturers, and all these people do the webinars. And then we'll do the work, and we'll look at the background, and then we'll have our say a month or so after it's out. I think. Otherwise, we'll be repeating ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, we did the webinar anyway last year when the draft came out, and that killed us. That was an intense 2 nights of epic effort. So I was quite pleased we did that. We got some early stuff in there, and hopefully we gave a different view from those who are financially incentivized, i.e. the manufacturers, to push certain agendas, whereas we'd rather just have an objective engineering debate. So what do you think, John? What do you aim for then? Do you when you go out on the tools, are you a good practice man or are you a best practice man?
Well, I think we like to go towards best practice if we can. I mean, obviously there are, like I said before, there are things where it's just making it look pretty, isn't it? But if it's going to actually enhance the installation and add value and obviously make it easier to deal with in the future and whatever, then why not? Because
what's your approach when you come? If you obviously a lot of your work is domestic, is that right?
Yes.
So if you've got a client that's a bit tight, wants to spend less, how much do you let that influence your standard of workmanship with regards to your equipment selection, your anything? Would you let them have any kind of say with regards to the products you'd install?
Up to a point. I mean, if people want a new consumer unit, which is a fairly common thing, especially with all the new stuff coming in. Obviously, you can buy consumer units from lots of manufacturers, and some of them are way more expensive than others.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to pay a lot less for it, then you can get cheaper ones. So it might save a bit of money. But I think it would be better in that case to say, is it really worth spending slightly less now to get something which could be, the manufacturer could disappear next week. It's one of those sort of weird brands that just pops up and disappears. So if people want something that's a bit less, then the options are there. But I think you've got to think, well, is it really worth going down that route? And a lot of people will say, oh, well, actually, maybe not then. And you can go down like things like, it's like if you're going to have a car, if you're going to buy a new car, there's lots of models to choose from. They all basically do the same thing. But on the other hand, are you going to want to buy a BMW, or are you going to buy some unknown import brand you never heard of? So, it is difficult with some people, because some people obviously just want to spend the absolute bare minimum on it. And in fact, in many cases, they don't want to spend the money at all. They're just doing it because they've been told that this doesn't comply and you want to rent it out next week, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But most people, generally, if you explain to them what the point of it is and what you're getting, then a lot of people are actually happy to spend a bit of extra money and have a better quality installation, knowing that it's going to be, say, if you bought a consumer unit and the manufacturer's still going to be around in 10 years' time.
That's a good point, though. There's so many new manufacturers now, or new names or new labels coming out. You don't really know if they're going to be here in a few years' time.
Yeah. So you put a new consumer in today of some unknown manufacturer, 3 years' time they want a new circuit for an electric car or something. Oh, sorry, this manufacturer doesn't exist anymore, so therefore you need another new consumer unit, which is not exactly value for money, is it?
This is why for my one downstairs, I mean, my one is Fusebox, and I'll be very careful what I say, but I went with Fusebox. I had a choice, and I thought, well, I'll go with the one that everybody is ranting about online.
Yeah.
CP fuse box, circuit protection fuse box, and it was a bit of a difficult thing jump starting it, because the minute I got the box, as you do, you open it up, you've got the tails clamp, and the first thing I did was you screwed the tails clamp to the back of the board. Well, the holes in the clamp didn't line up with the pre-drilled holes on the board, so I then had to ring up the people I bought it from, and they sent me another board. And then the second one came, and the fixing holes were, they were all rusting. So I had to get another board. So I had 3 boards from the company I bought it from before I could actually get the tails clamping and get it on the wall. And then once I got the whole job finished, I did find that I don't know the way it sits, but you had like almost half a width of a RCD gap on the left-hand side, which isn't that great. And having installed it, in my personal experience, I didn't see what the hype was. I can understand why they'd go to cheap, or best value brand, whatever you want to call them. But if I could, I would go with Wilex every single time. I went with a 21-way RCBO Type A board, and for what I paid, they're good value. But as John rightly said, if they're still here in 10 years, or regardless of who they are, I have bought spare surge protection devices, and I've bought one of every single miniature RCBO just in case of obsolescence. So if I need to do anything in the future, make any alterations, additions, I've got the right rating, the right size breaker. If the SPD blows, I've got something to replace it with. And I even, because I bought a main switch enclosure, I've got 2 SPDs in series, which is quite different. So luckily nothing's happened to them. But I can see why they're the go-to brand and they're selling truckloads. But I personally would probably go with Wilex or Crabtree if I was ever to fit another board. I would go, because I used to fit nothing but Wilex in domestic. They were my go-to boards, and I regret not going with them and getting a double stack board. But as a fit and functional for the price, I think fuse box for Type A RCBOs, minimal compliance, reasonably sturdy board. As long as you don't get one that's got a few issues with it, I think they're a good go-to board.
Right, so you can definitely select fuse box and still be satisfied with best practice.
Yeah,
there's nothing inherently there that you think.
Well,
that
my
you
one
could have
is
done better with that.
just look at the photos on our Instagram account, and you'll see. Okay, yeah, I did go a bit bonkers with the Critchleys. Yes, they took hours to stitch on. I'm a bit rusty with my cable stitching, but they tick the box.
What about USB sockets? Because I've got to make a couple of rigs for testing, so I just went for the cheapest thing I could find. I don't even know who this company, Long Life Lamp Company. I don't know who they are. All right, wow. I'm sure they're quality, but they're going to go on a test rig, and I'm probably going to kill them with an insulation tester.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going now. They're going on the test rig. I'm sure they're good.
But so I have, since we've obviously been off, I have discovered the joys of Skolmore, and this is not a paid advert, but their USB sockets, the one with the micro USB-C and Type A USB, I think they're the best.
They're the ones that have the good power rating, aren't they? They're
yes,
the ones that have got the higher power on USB-C.
One of them will give you over 3 amps. It's fast charge. The other one is your normal one. But what I like about them is we're going to have everything's going to be Type C USB eventually. What I like about these is the devices you have that are old, it's backwards compatible, it's future proof. So when I went and did my dad's house in Ireland, I actually put some USB chargers in and around his house, and I find the Skolmore ones were really, really good quality. I thought they were excellent. As far as I normally use Schneider for all my sockets and switches, but Schneider don't do a USB-C one. So Schneider, once again, unfortunately, being very, very slow. No.
Oh.
They're very slow on making changes to their product.
Because they've got the shelves, haven't they?
Yes, which I've got in my living room. All my living room is Schneider with the shelves, but if they don't hurry up, I'll end up putting the Skolmore stuff in my living room.
That's another good point, though. I mean, if one manufacturer doesn't kind of keep up with the others, you may end up being forced to change your selection choices.
Yeah, I mean, there's no perfect single manufacturer of anything. I mean, for the like sockets and switches, I normally fit Crabtree and have done for years. But having said that, I mean, I did a kitchen the other week or last week, and the customer there didn't want a cooker switch with a big orange rocker switch on it. And of course, they've had that huge, massive orange switch on it for forever. So I said, well, that's fine. We can get some of the manufacturer. I ended up putting Schneider ones in because they have a nice white switch.
Yeah,
So
they're
that's fine. We'll
nice.
just do the kitchen in these, so the kitchen matches, but obviously it won't be quite the same as the other rooms. But so again, there's nothing wrong with it as an electrical item. It's just the look of it, because you've got this gigantic orange rocker switch on the front of it, which, let's face it, does look a bit ghastly. So there is no perfect manufacturer for anything. It's just
No.
some parts are okay, but obviously other things may be better from someone else.
Let's talk about Crabtree and those switches. I remember when I used to install MK. Remember the pull cords for showers?
Yeah.
Those were really hard to actually operate the MKs. And we
break
did
your string after a few years.
Yeah, we did some work in a sheltered accommodation, and the tenants these old people couldn't operate them.
Yeah.
So we spec full MK except for those shower cords, which we had to spec Crabtree. Because with those you could just do it with 2 fingers. So one manufacturer's single splits can change everything.
I found MK. I've walked away from MK for a number of years since Honeywell took over, just because I found the quality of the screws when you'd get a new socket. Honestly, the amount of force you'd have to put into it. Well, they just cross thread. You'd have to put so much effort into just getting the thread to go. This thing came out recently, which is the Vargo socket outlet from MK. I did a review on this on Instagram, but it didn't save. And basically, in a nutshell, while we're here giving an update, it's made in Malaysia. So nil point for the made in Malaysia, because from a carbon footprint, you've lost a sale. I wouldn't mind. I've checked it with cables and stuff, and what I found was, I know there was a video online where somebody was pulling it, but that can easily be staged. Just because I did it on my Instagram and it worked well, but once you go down below 1.5 mil, you can get it pulling out. But realistically, where it's caught up in the back of a socket, it's not going to come loose. It's not going to move.
The only question I had on it, which I haven't actually looked into or researched where things are going forward, is if we have circuits with protective conductor currents in excess of 10 milliamps, I believe, then we have to have the high integrity earthing on our ring final circuits, and then we have to have our protective conductors in 2 terminals.
No, we don't. That's going, remember? Amendment 2 is removing.
We don't know what Amendment 2 is doing yet. If the risk assessment, risk assessment goes, then that goes. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be applicable after that.
Yeah, if that goes, then that all they're doing is aligning with a European standard that already doesn't recognise that. It's going.
I think it will go completely, because
of course it is.
The problem with that particular thing is that if you look at one of the other regulations about RCDs and the maximum current you can have in normal use, it's 30%, and it's 9. So you can't comply with that and the other one as well.
But we concluded that, but that meant the risk assessment can't be used.
Yes.
Do you think that they'll actually do that? So you just have to have an RCD on a 13-amp socket outlet, regardless of where it goes.
I think that's inevitable.
It's inevitable.
And you're going to have places like, say, a school with computers on the outlet. You're going to have multiple circuits for each.
Oh, schools will have like literally a board for each like bench.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
with RCBO
transformers and stuff.
But in food industry and stuff where I work, that is gonna change everything. Everything's gonna go to 60309.
Money. Everything's circular economy, mate. But as far as the socket goes, I think I gave this an 8 out of 10 for appearances and functionality and all the rest of it. I think I said that I wouldn't put this on anything less than a 35mm back box, preferably 40 odd. But a massive thumbs down, because it's made in Malaysia, and that's not me being racist or prejudiced. I really want to support British-made products, British-made manufacturing, and if MK made everything back in good old Blighty again, I would probably look at them and use these. But I'm not. We need to be mindful now of our carbon footprint, sustainability, and that's the first thing that it smacks at me. Also, it has a UK CE mark, and a CE mark, which is interesting because you only CE mark stuff that's made to harmonised standard, and this is British standard. So why have they put that on there?
Let's throw that argument back at the fuse box. I'm sure that's brought in, isn't it? Which you'd recommend, opposed to other boards that maybe are made in the UK. How do we? I mean, what is it? Is it maybe that boards we wouldn't worry so much about, but if we use accessories where we buy many more of them, we would be a bit more.
It's a good point actually, because as far as I'm aware, fuse box is an English company or Scottish company, but
yeah, but they're not buying them in.
Yeah, I think most places do, but I think what's happening at the moment. I mean, I'm doing a lot of work at the moment on sustainability and carbon credits, carbon scoring, carbon footprints, and more questions are going to be asked of these sorts of manufacturers as to where are you sourcing your materials, what are you doing about your carbon footprint. And me personally, I would love to see a UK based. We went to see Electrium. They've got a factory where they make them all there, but they also acknowledge they bring stuff in as well.
I'm sure Schneider do. I mean, Schneider makes a lot of their stuff in, is it Swansea or over Wales Way?
Yep.
They've got a factory over there. That's where they make a lot of the not the Multi-9, the Acti. What's their
Acti-9?
Acti-9. A lot of that stuff's made over there. I don't know if the boards are made over there, though.
I purely on a very selfish. I genuinely am a firm believer in invest in Britain, invest in jobs, invest in apprentices. I'm not a politician, by the way. I'm a massive fan of seeing local businesses doing well, investing in the local community, and we need to look at that sort of stuff in general. I have always been in my workplace. You know, Dave, I specify British built switchgear all the time. So I don't buy panel boards. I buy switchgear made by a switchgear manufacturer in Nottingham. I always have done for most of my career. I'll name them. AF Switchgear, great manufacturer. And they invest in the local community. They invest in apprentices. And I love that because that's money going into British businesses, which...
But, I mean, small tradesmen, you can't... I mean, we had these large... I mean, I saw a TV advert by Sky talk about the fact they're going by 2030 to be carbon neutral. You have to... It's very, very loose as what carbon neutral means if a lot of your stuff is being bought
it's
from.
It's a term invented by the oil and petrochemical industries.
But I mean, if you're a sole trader or anything like that, you can't expect too much, can we?
No. But I think from going to places like Alex, wouldn't it be great if you could go? Because let's be honest about it, I live down the road from the MK factory. Wouldn't it be great? So I should be
not
installing.
That one, obviously.
I should be installing nothing but MK and supporting my local manufacturer. But my manufacturer is importing stuff from Malaysia, which then potentially prevents Basildon or Southend jobs. If they made these in England, then I'd be back supporting them again. But I can't because I need to vote with my wallet, with my pocket. And also the quality of these over the last 8 years or so since Honeywell took over has notably, as an installer as well. I mean, my God, Dave, I have bought these USB sockets from MK at 39 quid a go, 35 quid a go. I've got about 12 of them in the shed. They're absolute junk. They keep failing. They keep making silly noises. They're not great.
You should go with the Long Life Lamp Company. These are about 12 quid. Sure, they're great.
I can see it now. Sparky Ninja, sponsored by the Long Life Lamp Company.
Yeah.
Right, well, on that bombshell, just to thank everybody who is listening to this still, our little update ramble. We will be back with more updates, hopefully with the rest of the lads, if we can corral everyone together. We will be looking at various other things, regs from abroad, and lots of webinars coming up. And we will maybe have one or two interesting manufacturers back on to talk about updates and various other stuff. So, lads, have you got any final thoughts?
Not particularly, but I think just think about what you're fitting and why you're fitting it. Don't necessarily just go down for because it's cheap, because cheap isn't necessarily the best. And in many cases, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much the same, really. As I said earlier, you could spend a bit more money. You could probably spend a bit more time, make it look neater. But at the end of the job, if you feel that you could have done more to make it better from the sake of fire risk or electric shock, or even, you could have spent a bit more money to get a better level of protection, then, try and push to that point where you can't make it any better in those directions. To me, that's what good workmanship or best practice for me is.
So I'm gonna pick up on what John said about, doing a little bit more, not buying necessarily the cheapest. That quote I gave you on good practice, that benchmark, that minimum standard of good practice, something that worked well and produced good results. If you're an electrical contractor and you're getting called back because of product failures, then you're not achieving good practice. So you're just doing something that's fit, functional, works occasionally. So if you're getting callbacks
you're probably losing money and losing reputation.
You are
as
losing
well.
money and you're losing reputation. So you're not meeting good practice. So best practice, superior results. I mean, I'll be honest with you, if somebody says to me, recommended go-to company for switches, Schneider every single time. Skolmore for their new sockets in a domestic environment. Fuse boards, it's Schneider in a commercial environment. I've no objection to fuse box in a domestic environment as long as it's installed well. But yeah, that's it really. So think about your reputation, think about what is good practice, and think about what's best practice and what you aspire to be. And on that note, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back whenever with whoever on this next podcast. Until the next one, take care of yourself and each other. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.